Of course, as we do find out more results from other matchups, we will let you guys know. Again, a very stacked top 8 here, excuse me. You've got Michael Majors, you've got Michael Braverman, Dustin Biggers, Kevin Jones, and Andres Prost, along with Todd Anderson, Philip Braverman, and Dylan Donegan. So it's rare that we actually see the brother combination in the top 8, and they're on opposite sides of the bracket. So perhaps the brother mirror?
Yeah, we are on pace potentially to have that in the finals. They're on opposite sides of the bracket. I don't know if we've had siblings before in the elimination rounds, but we've never had siblings before in the finals of an event.
Yeah, let's do the brother mirror in the finals, and they just say, you know what, we can't play. We're too good of friends. So let's just split and go home.
We can't bear to have mom and dad go through the pain of watching us compete in the finals like this.
Definitely not.
Just pack it up and go home.
There you go. And then one of them will have to argue who's first place and second.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
It's alphabetical order, right? That's how that works.
Yeah, that'll go to Michael.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to Michael Braverman, Star Games Open Series champion.
Well-deserved champion.
Absolutely. The alphabet always in his favor. Again, just a super, super accomplished top 8. And don't forget, too, the very last round, Huey Jensen was playing against Ross Merriam for top 8. Ross Merriam ended up winning that match and then missing out on breakers. So he could have been in the top 8 here instead of Dylan Donegan, but his breakers held up. So it could have been even more stacked. It could have been crazy.
Yeah, Ross was complaining to me in between rounds. He says, why can't pro points you've played against be the tiebreaker, as he went through Reed, Duke, Shahar, Shinhar, and Huey Jensen, and ultimately fell short of making the top 8.
That is a tough tournament.
Yeah.
Wowee.
So Todd's list has, I wouldn't quite call it an innovation, but he does have a slightly different build in that he's playing 2 main deck copies of Jace the Mind Sculptor. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you see these in sideboards. Rarely do you see them in main decks. But I think this card has a chance of playing a critical role in the matchup. Again, Todd, Abrupt Decay doesn't touch Jace. Dylan has a lot of disruptive elements, a lot of one-for-one trades like counter spells and thought seizes and so forth. If Todd is able to stick a Jace on a stable board, it can allow him to power through a lot of Dylan's discard and counter spells.
He's also got a real spicer in the sideboard, the old one of Beseiju, which I believe he ruined somebody with a little bit earlier.
Oh, boy. You were not on camera for that round.
No, I was not.
He was playing against Miracle, so a matchup where all they have to interact with you is counter spells, and your life total is under no duress. Okay. So Todd had Beseiju as the first land drop. It had to be red, and it ended up facilitating some show and tell action not that long after the fact.
The old Champions of Kamigawa rare land, and there are some real doozy rare lands in that set.
Oh yeah, what's the one where you get to pay 7,000 life to make a legend come into play with haste? Or
that's the old Hall of the Bandit Lord.
There's some doozies in that set.
Go ahead and pick those up at your local game store. It's a real doozy. I can't even remember all the other ones. They also had their cycle of lands, like dual lands, like the blue black and the red green one, where I think it comes into play tapped, or if you tap it for a mana, it stays tapped for the next turn. It's just absurd.
Yeah. Nothing can match the Tempest off-color pain land / stay tapped lands as the worst of all time dual land cycle, but Champions Block had some doozies as well.
Yeah, one of my favorite sets when I was coming up. Sig Anderson's going to be on the play. He's going to take a look at his hand. Not sure if he's going to keep a mulligan just yet. He's got a Misty Rainforest, a Flooded Strand, looks like a Lotus Petal, and some other action here.
A little late on cantrips. Generally, the Sneak and Show deck is missing components, but you can keep those kind of hands because you have Brainstorms and Ponders and such to find the last couple of pieces. But looks like Todd's hand is missing at least one piece on top of not having a lot in the way of cantrips.
Yeah, he's just going to play Mystery Rainforest and pass the turn back. Dylan has kept in his hand, and we are underway here in the quarterfinals of our Legacy Open.
The Sneak and Show deck, of course, has plenty of powerful draws from here.
Mm-hmm. Verdant Catacombs going to put Donegan down to 19. He's going to go get himself an underground. See, of course, there are no wastelands here for for Donegan to be scared of, so he can just keep searching for non-basics. But wouldn't be surprised if his Bug Delver deck was basic-less.
Yeah, quick check here. Yeah, no basics in this list. The deck is trying to cast Hymn to Torak, Abrupt Decay, Jace the Mind Sculptor. There's no real room for that sort of stuff.
Delver's Secret's going to get the ball rolling here for Dylan.
And this is a great start, and you see Dylan with Force of Will in hand. That's the recipe you need, to clock and some disruption.
So Todd capped a hand here with a bunch of lands, a Lotus Petal, a Gristlebrand, and an Emrakul. So he loves the big monsters. What he needs is a show and tell or sneak attack type effect, or of course, any of his numerous cantrips.
Yeah, and fortunately for him, Todd's hand is fairly daze-proof as he is. He's flush with mana, so.
Insect Celebration going to come into the red zone. This is a Bayou. And it's half out, a little bit low here. Will Dylan. Tarmogoyf being placed on the stack. That's going to resolve. Just a 1-2 right now as there's land in the graveyard. Anderson's going to take a draw. It is a copy of Sneak Attack.
Okay, well, again, Todd is aware of days.
Yeah, he can play accordingly here. The other thing he can do is he can play Lotus Petal and an Ancient Tomb and try to go for it. He'll have to take a lot of damage to do so because he's going to have to take 2 from the tomb and sack these fetch lands, but he's moving on in.
Yeah, keep in mind that if his Sneak Attack actually resolves, Dylan cannot get it off the table. His only board removal is Abrupt Decay, which can't touch a 4-mana permanent. So there is some upside in Todd going for it here. It's likely to get worse for him also as the game proceeds because Dylan's going to find Thought Seizes or additional disruption. So even though Todd doesn't have much in the way of backup himself, it's likely to only get worse over time, and so it makes a lot of sense to go for it here.
Anderson's going to take 2 from the Ancient Tomb. He's going to play a Sneak Attack. He goes down to 13 here. Dylan can look at his hand. There's a Force of Will moving a Brainstorm. Anderson says, all right, unfortunately, that's okay. There goes my chance to win the game right on the spot. Just has to pass the turn back. Got to try to find himself a Show and Tell or another copy of Sneak Attack as Tarmogoyf has moved up now to a 3-4.
Fairly interesting that Dylan would elect to keep Daze here over the Brainstorm in his hand, but if he's planning on, I guess he's going on a mana denial plan here. Abrupt Decay on the Lotus Petal, which I like a lot as Abrupt Decay has no other targets, and it puts an artifact in the graveyard for Tarmogoyf, and alongside Wasteland can really pin Todd's mana. So maybe I spoke too soon. It looked like Dylan had a plan here, keeping that Daze with the intent of attacking Todd's mana.
Can Todd draw a Show and Tell? How about another Gristlebrand? That's going to do it. Dylan Donegan is going to win game number 1 here. Bug Delver up a game over Todd Anderson playing Sneak and Show. See a bit of a smile there. Todd saying, kind of kept the sketcher and didn't get there. But we're going to bring it back to the booth here. Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan, Star City Games Open Series here in Charlotte, making our way through our elimination rounds of our Legacy Open. But it is trivia time, and my gentleman here has the rules.
Cedric's going to ask you a question. You will tweet that answer at SCG Live, hashtag SCG Premium. Of the correct responders, one will be selected at random to receive 3 free months of Star City Games premium content. It is about accuracy, not speed, so don't worry about being the first person to respond. Just respond accurately.
It's not going to be too tough, I promise. And Todd Anderson's sideboard, we are not going to discuss the Visage. We already did that. What he has are a couple of artifacts hiding out over there, actually 2 of them. And if you can name that 2 of artifact in Todd's sideboard, hashtag the answer with the hashtag of SCG Premium. Make sure you're following SCG Live so we can get the winner, the premium, over to them. And again, we'll announce the winner at the conclusion of our quarterfinal round as we're going to head back over to our match. Now we're going to analyze some sideboards here, and we are going to start with, totally Todd Anderson. We'll see 1 Red Elemental Blast, the Besaju that we talked about a little bit earlier, 2 Through the Breach, 2 copies of Swan Song, 4 Leyline Sanctity, 3 Pyroclasms, and a couple of Grafdigger's Cages. Now, you see, some of these cards are actually going to be pretty good, and I think in this matchup. My question for you is, how do you feel about a card like Pyroclasm, which can take care of Deathrite Shaman and can also take care of Delver, but not so good against a card like Tarmogoyf?
I think it's hard for Todd to win the game on that kind of front. I think that you need Pyroclasm for cards like Meddling Mage or other disruptive hate bears. Thalia comes to mind as well. I don't think you can afford to bring it in just to answer random creatures that aren't actually preventing you from going off, especially against a deck with Thoughtseize and creatures that can survive a Pyroclasm. I think there's just too many moving parts to make that an effective weapon. So I think that Todd ultimately leaves it in the sideboard.
I expect to see probably both Seiju come in here as he used it to great effect a little bit earlier against Miracles. I wouldn't be surprised to see him do the same. Along with maybe the Red Elemental Blast, he could make himself a little more redundant with the copies of Through the Breach. Maybe he just wants to keep fighting on the Counterspell War with a card like Swan Song. That can also help to counter some discard effects. Or maybe he just goes straight to Leyline Sanctity to get the job done and ignore discard effects. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's really tough actually in the sideboarded games here because Todd has to fight multiple fronts here. He's looking at a quick clock, he's looking at permission, and he's looking at discard. So he can't just lean on Besaju or just lean on Leyline because Dylan's attacking him on multiple fronts.
You see on Donegan's side, the 3 Hymn to Thorax, 2 Nile Spellbombs, the Sylvan Library, 2 Disfigures, 2 Golgari Charms, 2 Spell Pierces, Submerge, a Vendilion Click, and Lilianaville. The scariest one is obviously Hymn to Thorax, but it kind of begs the question, is he going to bring that in when he knows that Todd has Leyline Sanctity in his sideboard?
Yeah, this is a big guessing game here. I mean, Dylan does have the 4 copies of Abrupt Decay. I think he's almost certainly going to remove them. I think he certainly wants his copy of the Vendilion Click and his 2 copies of Spell Pierces. I think that's almost a given. After that, it gets a little more complicated. Does he want him? Now, him has the potential to be powerful against Todd, but it's less powerful against decks like Seek and Show that are trying to put A plus B together than it is against a deck like Storm that's all about assembling a critical mass of spells. Does he want Golgari Charm? Golgari Charm can kill the card Sneak Attack. Often the Sneak Attack player has to tap out for Sneak Attack with the intent of going off the following turn. This is especially true against a deck that can present cards like Daze and Spell Pierce, but Golgari Charm is incredibly narrow outside of those situations. Does he want Liliana the Veil? Liliana does have the opportunity to be good against the card Show and Tell if Todd happens to Show and Tell an Emrakul, and Edict is a powerful response there. But Liliana is going to be inefficient in a lot of other spots as well. So outside of the Vendilion Click and the 2 Spell Pierces, which I believe are certainly coming in, the rest of the sideboard is kind of up in the air. I believe because Dylan certainly wants to remove his 4 copies of Abrupt Decay, there's at least one more flex slot coming in. And then beyond that, we'll see, as the rest of his sideboard is Permission, Cantrips, Thought Seizes, and Liliana the Veils. Unless he wants to remove Liliana the Veil altogether from his deck, which is not unreasonable in my opinion, I don't see where he's going to make room for these additional sideboard cards unless he does a lot of shaving.
We'll see how things do go here as both players are finishing shuffling up for game number 2. Dylan Donegan getting the job done pretty easily in game number 1 over Todd Anderson. See if Todd keeps a more interactive hand as he's looking over some of the sideboards here. Both players, of course, having access to each other's deck. Let's want to make sure they know exactly what each opponent can bring in from those 15 cards.
Yeah, Todd had an opening hand that could be charitably described as speculative, and Dylan's draw was just incredible. An early Delver of Secrets backed up by Force of Will with a Tarmogoyf. Dylan's hand was pretty close to perfect, and Todd kept probably the bottom of his range of keepable hands there.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I understand why Todd kept it. The thought process here is, he's got some counter spells that are kind of like taxing-esque effects. He's pretty safe against discard like Thoughtseize because he just has redundant copies of big dummies in his hand. So if he is able to spike a Show and Tell or a Sneak Attack and the opponent doesn't have Force of Will, he's actually good to go. It turns out that Dylan did have Force of Will, and so that gets the job done. So I don't think it's an outrageous keep, but, it does look kind of bad on the surface, especially how the game played out, which is, okay, my Sneak Attack got countered and I lost.
Yeah. Dylan's draw was so merciless that
His draw is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And any draw involving Delver Secrets and Force of Will is already a really, really good one. And we already know how punishing the Bug Delver deck can be. It's why it's one of the best decks in the format and has been picking up in popularity like crazy recently.
Yeah. Delver of Secrets plus Force of Will is about the best recipe in the format for attacking combo decks.
Yeah.
Doesn't get that much better.
Yeah. Maybe you throw a Stifle in there, maybe not. Discard's certainly potent. I know that some people have written about, Bug Delver and just how, and Drew 11 is first I think of the most, of just how this deck plays the most played cards in Legacy, like throughout the entire deck, between Deathrite Shaman, Thoughtseize, Delver, Goyf, like the fetch lands that it plays, Force, Daze, Brainstorm, Ponder. It is the collection of all of arguably the best cards in Legacy all in one deck.
Wasteland too.
Yes.
And there's a ton of synergy and interlocking pieces that are going on here. Brainstorm plus Delver is a great synergy. Fetch lands plus Deathrite Shaman. I mean, it sounds ridiculous to say because these are some of the foundation synergies of the format, but Bug Delver exploits nearly all of them.
Can't even forget about Decay and Deathrite Shaman too. It just has all of the... We talked about during the elimination rounds when Derek Sheets won the Invitational how the Esper Deathway deck has all the best cards. It might actually just be Bug Delver that has all the best cards in Legacy, all within the one package.
Yeah, it depends really where you put Jace the Mind Sculptor on that scale. It's certainly the most powerful card in the format on a stable board that's realistic to cast. The opportunity cost is much higher. You have to get to 4 mana, and the board needs to be relatively stable for you to be able to maximize its power.
Yeah.
Whereas the Bug Delver deck isn't messing around with anything that requires the board to look a particular way or for you to put in a lot of work to maximize the power level of the cards. So it's a bit of apples and oranges. Depending on where you rate Jace on the scale, but certainly both decks are maximizing a lot of the powerful cards of the format and a lot of the same powerful cards.
Yeah, the one thing you'll see in Dylan's deck that he does not have, the Boogeyman, that is True Name Nemesis, that's nowhere within his deck list, and we have seen Bug decks go without that. The one I think about the most is the one that won Grand Prix Paris, choosing not to play True Name Nemesis.
Yeah, I think True Name Nemesis is primarily a concession to creature matchups, and between Liliana the Veil and Abrupt Decay, you have a lot of action for those matchups.
Well, it's time to take a look at some opening hands here. Todd's hand has a lot more cantrips this go around, along with a Force of Will. So I imagine he's going to keep here. The question is, does he want to start off with a fetch land, maybe find a basic or lead with the Volcanic Island?
Yeah, it looks like Todd's hand's missing nearly all of his pieces, but he does have Force of Will and quite a few cantrips.
He's just going to pass the turn back. No turn 1 Ponder.
Yeah, I think, does he have Spell Pierce in hand? Maybe he wants to protect himself from a turn 1 Thoughtseize.
Sure. There's a Verdant Catacombs. Not going to get wastelanded on turn 1. Kind of interesting, where he just plays that instead of maybe a Fetch land too, but maybe he just wants to fetch land in case he runs into a brainstorm or finds one card that he wants from Ponder and shuffle the other ones away.
Yeah, there's not a huge incentive to shuffle right away, and the fetch land can provide utility down the road.
Okay. And Dylan have a creature. He's got the Thoughtseize. Well, you called it.
Yeah. So Todd potentially getting paid off for his patience here.
Maybe a little Daze action.
I think this is worth fighting over if you're Dylan.
Yeah, Thoughtseize is that powerful. Yep. So here is a Daze. Now Todd's going to expose his hand. And it's kind of funny, too, because this is a hand that I think that Todd, if he gets Thoughtseized, he doesn't really care, but he's also setting Dylan back almost 2 turns, right?
Yeah, I think both players are kind of happy with the sequence. It's a pretty good spot to cast in Daze. Of course, you want your Thoughtseize to resolve, but Todd's hand is pretty Thoughtseize proof, as he's a second backup cantrip in the event that Dylan decides to take one of those, and there's no critical singular piece in his hand. Todd's hand is fairly speculative right now.
And even if Todd loses a Force of Will, which he does lose off the Thoughtseize, well, those Ponders can turn into anything. You see he draws a Misty Rainforest for the turn, going to lead off with the Ponder. So, take a look at 3 cards. There's a Force, a Sneak, and an Island, and I presume he's going to want probably 2 of those cards.
Well, I'm not sure if he has any interest in Force of Will at this point, as he's low on resources, but Sneak Attack is the first piece of the puzzle he's looking for.
Okay. And you see he slides Force of Will to the top shelf, so it looks like he does want one of those. I was a little bit surprised too, actually, as here comes a Misty Rainforest, pass the turn back. It's kind of hard to turn down a Force of Will. He's also going to play a Lotus Petal and pass the turn.
Yeah, it's reasonable to assume there's going to be a battle somewhere down the line that requires that Force of Will, but it is challenging given how low on total resources Todd is at this point.
And the nice thing is for Anderson, he's not underneath any pressure. There's no delve or anything. If there's a Misty Rainforest, Todd going to sacrifice this right away. And it looks like he's moving in here with Sneak Attack, with the thought process being that if I have this in play, it's very hard for you to answer.
Yeah, and he has to worry about a bunch of stuff post-board here, the Vendilion click, all this off permission. He needs to land this if he can, because it's only likely to get worse.
Yeah, he's just moving in. Todd, very aggressive.
And you can see now why he kept the Force of Will.
Yep.
He has a Force of Will to fight over this, and then it's the Sneak Attack's in play. It's not going anywhere.
Yep.
And if I find something, you die. Or you're likely to die.
Yeah. And if you are able to deal with all of this stuff, then that's okay. And I think that's his thought process, is if you can deal with all of this, then that's okay, because I'm not underneath any pressure. And now here's a Force of Will, removing a Ponder. Does Dylan have a counterspell?
Oh.
He does. He has a Daze. Jeez. So the second Daze is going to get the job done. And now Todd, all he can do is just pass the turn back. But again, he's at 17. Yes, he has no cards in his hand, but Dylan has no pressure.
Yeah, this is a some assembly required situation from Todd here. I was wondering if Dylan was going to bring in the Gogari Charm. The way that game went, this game has gone, was ideal for it.
Yeah. There's a Deathrite Shaman going to pass the turn back. Todd picks up Show until he'll pass it back. He has a City of Traders in his hand right now. Dylan going to draw a card. That's a Tropical Island. Deathrite. Looks like it's going to shove in for 1. Going to put Todd down to 16. Anderson will take a draw step. It's a copy of Gataxian Probe, and there's a Vendilion click during the draw step. So, going to show the grip. Todd says, is show and tell going on the bottom yet?
Yeah, one assumes. Set Todd back to the point where he needs 2 pieces again.
Yeah. And he's going to take a draw here. Mystery card coming. It's an Emrakul, which the probe would have found. So, fire off. He's going to see a Force Will, Brainstorm.
Sure, why not?
And a land. Yeah, absolutely. We call this the world.
Yeah. This is going to be a challenge for Todd.
Yeah, I'd say so. Clock's out there. Todd draws a Flooded Strand, has to just pass the turn back here.
And making matters even worse, because of the Vendilion click and play, Jace the Mind Sculptor is no longer a threat Dylan is particularly concerned about.
Yeah, for sure.
You would imagine under normal circumstances that'd be a way for Todd to, to force Dylan to vote some resources to killing Jace, allow him to build up his hand a little bit, but that plan's off the table.
Yeah. Dylan going to remove the Gataxian Probe with Deathrite Shaman. Anderson's going to go down to 11. He's underneath the gun, and he knows that his opponent has a Force Will and a blue card. There's a Delver's Secrets that comes rolling off the top, which means that Dylan can afford to actually cast the Brainstorm. Since now he has a backup blue card, he's going to start by attacking for 3. Anderson's going to go down to 8. This will be a Brainstorm in the second main phase, I believe, as he plays a land. And he's actually going to play a Delver here. I think, actually, for the reason for that is because he can actually present lethal next turn.
Yeah. Might as well wrap it up when you can.
Yeah. He's with 1 draw step, and he knows he's got a Force Will and a blue card, so he knows life is good. And he actually doesn't even need the blue card because he can hardcast the Force Will because of the 4 lands and the Deathrite Shaman. Todd will draw a card. It's an island. He's going to show the hand of Emrakul and lands, and that is going to do it. Dylan Donegan is going to win this match over Todd Anderson. 2-0. Bug Delver is moving on to play the winner of Michael Majors and Mike.